Well, Tyler, we're 37 days away, 5 Saturdays away. It's that time of year, about to go into fall camp. Season's almost here. We'll be previewing the offense today. But first off, if you do want to follow the show and find us, the Spurs Up Show will be on iTunes. Please be sure to go there, rate and subscribe there. You can also find us on armchairallamericans.com, of course, and also all of the South Carolina Gamecocks breaking news and all the coverage. Also, be sure to follow our Twitter account. We're very active on Twitter. That's going to be at Armchair SCAR, so Armchair SCAR. I believe we're also getting an Instagram page soon, Tyler, so we'll have to see about that. But we're back here. This is episode 10. As always, I'm joined by my colleague Tyler Clark, episode 10 of the Spurs Up Show. Tyler, first off, how you been, man? How's everything going? How you feeling coming into fall camp?
Excited. 37 days. I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's really crept up on us. I know I've been doing the countdown on the Twitter page, and it's pretty wild to see. It just gets here before you know it. So South Carolina does open fall camp July 31st. They actually pushed it back. I think it was the 27th, but now they'll open up fall camp July 31st. Players will be reporting in, probably this weekend, over the weekend, and get things going next week. So like I said, we are going to be previewing the offense. Before we do that, first off, I want to go over some new commits that South Carolina has gotten of late. This past weekend, South Carolina held a camp, in Columbia. They also had the annual Spurs Up Cookout and got some commitments out of it, Tyler. I want to go over these really quickly. We actually had an article about it earlier this week, but Ronald Holly Jamison, 3-star wide receiver out of Irmo, South Carolina, actually played last year. He played at Highland Community College. Tyler, I was able to watch a little bit of his tape. Really a guy that to me stuck out as a gamer, guy that he maybe, I guess, out of high school didn't get a ton of offers and kind of developed later on, but kind of reminds me of a guy almost like a Josh Norman or some of these underrated guys that don't really get all the pub and the shining light that others do, but somebody that I think the coaching staff saw. I heard he looked great at camp and, really showed off his skill set, and the coaches kind of dug and found more information on him and kind of offered him. So really good pickup there. Another one, Tyquan Johnson, another wide receiver out of Screven County, Georgia. Another one, receiver with really good size. He's actually 6'3". Jesus Gibbs, another commit, offensive lineman out of Virginia, is ranked the 26th best O lineman in Virginia. Really good size and athleticism. Remember the 2018 class, and then actually a commit for the 2019 class is going to be Adarius Gee. I think it's Adarius Gee or Darius G. He's a 3-star linebacker out of Cordell, Georgia. Actually, the first commitment, I believe, for the 2019 class. Everything I'm hearing, really, really good player. It's just gonna all be about can we hold on to him? So Tyler, before I get and then. And also, actually, the Gamecocks got last night, finally got a defensive end commitment. And that was from, let me pull it up here. I didn't have it written down on my list last night.
I don't know how to say his last name, but it's like Kingsley Inagbear.
Kingsley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll call him Kingsley for now. Yeah.
I don't know how to say
South Carolina finally getting a defensive end commitment. I was able to watch him in his tape. Good power, good speed. So, overall, Tyler, kind of circling back around, how's your feeling about the latest recruiting efforts, kind of going from the Spurs Up weekend to, finally getting a defensive end commitment?
5 commits over a camp weekend is pretty good. I really like the guys that we got. I think Tyquan Johnson is really good. From all the stuff I saw on Twitter, they said that he kind of blew them away at the camp, which sounds good. And then Adarius Gee, I don't know if you saw his stats, but I had to look 4 times to see if his stats were legit, and they were the same on every website. They said
he had 208 tackles, right?
Yes, and 23. I think it's 23 and a half tackles for loss.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's what do you? I think you feel like you're on every play at that point when you have 208 tackles. I mean, that's wild. That's a wild number.
It's 13 and a half tackles a game, which as a sophomore, that's kind of hard to believe. But yeah, keeping that going is gonna be tough.
Yeah, for sure. I feel good about Muschamp and the staff holding on, but there's definitely going to be other teams that come after him. That's the hardest thing with recruiting. That's why me personally, I don't get too fired up with recruiting, especially at this point in the year, especially because these guys commit and flip so much, and even the guys that you do end up getting, like a Jamias Williams, we got him to commit early, and I don't think he may have never thought about going elsewhere, but there was a lot of drama coming down the end, thinking he was going to flip to Georgia. And these recruits like to make it dramatic. It's kind of their day and kind of get their name out there. But, as fans, we just kind of have to sit back and kind of roll with the punches. But anytime you can go into a weekend, like you said, get 4 commitments out of it is a great job by the staff. And, I agree with you. I think Tyquan Johnson, just getting another big receiver. And, Brian McClendon, they've done an excellent job of just kind of flipping the script of the wide receiver position. Really, I think going into last year, I mean, we had one guy coming back in Debo that had caught passes, I think, at all. And now you're kind of looking and you're starting to think, hey, this unit might actually be a strength on this team and going forward. And, you've got young guys like Ortre Smith, Shi Smith, who we're going to talk about. And then you're getting guys like Tyquan Johnson, Ronald Holly Jameson. So, I mean, just building depth. And, South Carolina last year, I think, where they were wondering how they were going to get 3 receivers on the field. Now it's kind of the point you might have six good ones. So, good job there. I mean, it's no surprise to me. This staff, bends over backwards to recruit. And, I was actually looking at our commitments for 2018, the 2018 class. Actually have got a full offensive unit. I think they got 5 O-linemen, a running back, 2 wide receivers, and a quarterback. So it's kind of interesting. They're probably going to be focused on defense heavily, I would think, going in this second half. And there's a lot of guys that haven't committed yet that are kind of committing later in August, September that, we'll obviously get to at that time. But, like I said, a good weekend for the Gamecocks, good weekend for Will Muschamp and Spurs Up. So, jumping in, like I said, we are going to preview the offense, going to go over everything from last year. Obviously, last year was a very interesting year, Tyler. South Carolina came with a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position with, Perry Orth and Brandon McElwain battling it out. I don't know if Jake Bentley was really even, figured into the conversation. And obviously, we all saw how it played out. The offense was flat out offensive in the first half of the season. The coaching staff decided to make a change, as we all know, went to the young gun in Jake Bentley, and, we all saw what happened from there. So, Tyler, I guess my first question is, and I didn't even include this on our talking points, but I was thinking about this earlier today, with Kurt Roper. Obviously, there were a lot of gripes and a lot of complaining with Kurt Roper and his play calling and kind of what he was doing, what he was doing out there. And, we all know the type of offense Roper likes to run with the little bubble screens. I think high completion percentage type passes. But how big of an impact do you think this season is? Not for because Kurt Roper's not going to lose his job, but you think this season's going to be for just in the minds of South Carolina fans as far as what they think about him and his play calling? How important do you see this season being for him?
I mean, like you said, I don't think he'll lose his job, but I think it would matter more for recruiting guys for offense than it does for his job. I mean, because the first, 6 games last year, the offense couldn't get 100 yards almost a game. What was the game McElwain had 37 passing yards? Was that A&M?
Georgia.
Oh, it was Georgia.
I think it was Georgia.
Okay. Yeah, that game, that was almost impossible to watch. And I think for a guy, obviously we have great wide receiver commits, but how could you want to commit to something like that as you continuously watched? But we learned kind of that was more of a quarterback problem and then wide receiver depth. But I think if he doesn't open up the playbook, it's going to be hard for him to continue to evolve the offense.
I agree. And in his defense, like you were saying, I mean, I was at the A&M game. I was at the Georgia game as you. And I remember I was very, very harsh on Kurt Roper and his play calling. But in his defense, I do think he was a little limited in what he was working with as far as a young freshman in Brandon McElwain that was probably, and looking back, was definitely thrown into the fire way too early, didn't have a great grip of the offense, didn't have the confidence he needed to run the position. And I think with Jake Bentley, I do think he was able to open it up a little more down the stretch in the last 7 games. Just to give you guys some stats, I mean, South Carolina last year averaged 14 points per game in the first 6 games. Over the last 7, they averaged 26.6 per game with Jake Bentley once inserted. So, I mean, on that, South Carolina does return a plethora of skill players. They've got Rico Dowdle, Hayden Hurst, Debo Samuel, Brian Edwards, Casey Crosby, just to name a few. Also, Tyson Williams, who transferred. And the place I want to start, which I think is the most important spot, is the offensive line. So Tyler, the offensive line returning 4 or 5 starters, 98 total starts combined. This was a big talking point from Will Muschamp in Hoover at SEC Media Days. That they returned some key guys and like Zach Bailey, who I think is one of the best linemen, not just the SEC, but maybe the entire country. Corey Helms, who has a real tenacity and nastiness about him on the O-line. And a lot of different versatility as well. The guys that have, because of last year, because of the struggles when they gave up 41 sacks and I think, average 3.7 yards a carry, had a lot of shuffling, a lot of guys weren't playing positions, guard to tackle, tackle to guard to even center. Tyler, how's your feeling going into the season on the offense with all that experience and with the guys they have coming back?
Initially, you kind of think you're like, man, the offensive line is going to be the weakness on the team. But if you look at it on paper, it doesn't look that bad because I'm looking at it on the script right here. I mean, Malik Young, Corey Helms, Zach Bailey. I agree. I think Zach Bailey's one of the best in the country, and he doesn't really get that praise from people around here. But yeah, I mean, it looks really good on paper, which I hope that translates because, 98 starts is a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked about it before, experience isn't always great if it's not good experience, but I think there will be good experience here. And I think that it does take time for an offensive line to gel. And this offensive line doesn't have to be great. They don't have to be the best offensive line in the conference. They do have to be serviceable, though. And with the type of guys you have, obviously your most precious asset on offense in Jake Bentley, and with the type of running backs we have, it's going to be up to that offense. And the guy that I actually wrote an article on this, we're actually previewing each position unit, and I actually pointed out Alan Knott is my guy with the most to prove. I just think coming, back in this season with the, at the center position, it always seemed like I think of a guy like TJ Johnson, like a guy that just led everyone on the offensive line. Kind of steps. The center is the quarterback of the offensive line. Checks into different blocking schemes and stuff like that. So it's going to be on him. I think they've definitely got the talent around him with Malik Young, like you said, at left tackle, Donnell Stanley at left guard, Alan Knott obviously at center, and you got Helms and Bailey on the right side of the line. So I definitely think
Mason Zandy
and no Mason Zandy. But one thing that I think does worry me a little bit is the depth chart did come out, and DJ Park is backing up both left guard and right guard. So it gets me a little concerned as far as with the depth because, obviously I'm not saying that South Carolina should be at the point, with Muschamp just in his second year, we can rotate, 2 sets of 5 that are no drop off in talent. That's kind of like Alabama-esque. But, Tyler, what's your feeling as far as like the depth on the O-line and what would you see being like a successful season for them as far as what are you expecting, I guess?
I'm not expecting a whole lot. I'm expecting a slight improvement from last year, which is all you can really hope for. But as far as depth goes, I think they're kind of concerned about it because you can see how many guys they've recruited. There are so many guys in that 2018 class. I can think on the top of my head, Wyatt Campbell, Hank Manos, and then Gibbs that we got the other day. And I'm pretty sure there's 2 more that I can't even think of right now.
Right.
So I think that they're really addressing the depth problem. I don't know if it's a problem right now, but I think that they see it as a potential problem in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think depth is going to be big on both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage. So, it's
way more.
I feel like I
the other side of the. I could say that I'm way more concerned about the other side of the line than I am the offensive line.
Right. Yeah, at least with this side, on the offensive side of the line, we have guys that have the ability and have kind of shown flashes. And that was the biggest thing. I'm looking just for more consistency, Tyler. Last year, like a guy like Corey Helms, we know how nasty he can be, how good of a lineman he can be. But there were just some times where I just felt like the line really, really underachieved and didn't play up to their capabilities. So just about being consistent. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a great O-line. This offense just needs a solid performance to click. And
there were a lot of times last year we would get in a rhythm and it'd be going down the field. And it'd be, obviously I think this offense is going to be a higher tempo than last year was. But, you get into a rhythm and you get inside the 40-yard line and then they sack you twice. Those kinds of things we'll have to avoid a little bit. But, that happened so much last year. You get into a rhythm and then they just kind of crap on themselves.
Right, and especially against the teams with a lot more, defensive line talent like Florida, like Clemson we saw last year. Jake Bentley had 0 time to throw either one of those games. And you start game 1 of 2017 with NC State, who is being regarded as having one of the best defensive lines in the country.
Right.
Actually, I even saw Cole Kublik. He's on the SEC network. He's actually got NC State to go to the playoff in his predictions.
I saw that.
Know. Yeah, pretty wild. I don't know about that, but they are, team with a lot of upside. So the offensive line definitely going to get a test week 1. Now, the guy they're going to be trying to keep off his back, obviously, is quarterback Jake Bentley. We've talked ad nauseum about Jake. Last year, 65.8% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 4 picks in just the 7 games he played. Into the season, throwing for almost 400 yards against USF, 3 touchdowns. Tyler, my question to you is, Jake Bentley came in, obviously everyone's been raving about him all off season, was supposed to be a high school senior last year. We all know the storylines. The question I have for you is, how good do you think Jake Bentley can be in his sophomore campaign?
Oh, man, that's a scary question. I've tried not to kind of buy into this whole Jake Bentley is the best thing since sliced bread thing that Carolina fans have gotten into lately because I'm terrified to commit to it because we haven't seen a quarterback like him here ever, maybe. In my lifetime, at least. Maybe Phil Petty type days. But
right.
That kind of pro-style quarterback terrifies me because it really is so much dependent on the offensive line. But I think he could be a lot better than he was last year, make quicker decisions, those types of things. But, I mean, I don't know what to expect stat-wise. I just hope that he can kind of deal with this playbook and learn a lot more stuff than he knew last year.
Yeah, and you definitely have to think, him being a coach's son and everything. And like I said, like we've talked about, getting a full spring, full summer to work out with the guys, having a full fall practice, and don't forget having those 15 practices he had in the before the bowl game. I mean, I definitely think he'll be way more prepared coming into game 1 this year than he was coming into UMass last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think, I did, we actually released our quarterback position preview today. And I think he's the best thing we've had since Connor Shaw for sure. What's really interesting,
100%.
what's really interesting, like you were saying though, is that he is that pro style. And, obviously offenses are shifting now to more, guys that maybe even run first, really spread offenses. And I think Jake can move a little bit. Obviously, the first run that comes to my mind is the 4th and 2 against Tennessee, where it's almost Steven Garcia-esque, where he escapes the pile and gets the first down. But it'll be really interesting to see how much they're going to use him in the type of read option plays or just different type of option plays. I think he has enough weapons around him where maybe you don't have to. But then again, these defenses now are so good. I just don't think you can just expect to drop back and shotgun every play and pick apart a defense like a Spurrier offense would. So I'm going to really interested to see what type of play calling they do with him. And, like I said, I definitely think the experience is going to help. My biggest thing, I'm kind of like you, and I was thinking about this today, and, the numbers to me, I definitely have numbers in my head that I think Jake Bentley should hit. I'm thinking almost I wouldn't be shocked if he threw for 3,000 yards, threw for 15 touchdowns. But to me, more so that what's more important than the numbers is how his composure and how much has he grown up from year 1 to year 2 as far as going on the road and leading a football team.
That's exactly what I want to see right there is being better on the road because he looked – I mean, as expected, he looked terrified.
Right, and he also didn't –
the Clemson game right. Really is such an outlier. It's hard to analyze that game, but the Florida game is a really good indication of – kind of how he reacted in the away games, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I mean, I completely expected that. But growing up, that's going to be the thing that he deals with this year because there's a lot of tough road games.
Yeah, and that's something I pointed out today, and that's I completely agree with you. It's one thing to perform in front of 85,000 people that are on your side, circa Tennessee game last year.
Yeah, Tennessee game was easy probably.
Right. They're all on your side, quiet, and we're on offense, but you go into the swamp, 90+ thousand people screaming at you, yelling at you. I mean, it's a lot for a kid to take in. I mean, you got to remember, like we all know, I mean, he's only 18 years old. For his first time probably playing in front of more than, 10,000 people. So I mean, at least on the road. So, yeah, it's gonna be really interesting his progression. Like you said, there's some big road games. I mean, I know NC State's not technically a road game, but I imagine that's going to be a 60-40 crowd if I had to predict right now. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. But anyways, the true road games, even at Missouri in week 2, at Texas A&M, at Tennessee, at Georgia. I mean, those are some pretty intimidating environments. So, and if South Carolina plans to have any type of the season I know that fans are looking for, that the team especially is looking for, you got to win on the road. So to me, more so than even the numbers, it's going to be how does he perform, in those tough environments? Can he doesn't have to be the hero. Can he get the ball to his playmakers, not make the dumb mistakes, take care of the football, sort of like what a Connor Shaw did? So be really interesting to see. Now, one thing I do want to talk about actually is the backup quarterback situation, Tyler, but just because there is that chance that, knock on wood, obviously, that Jake Bentley for some reason is out, some weird type of thing. You've got Michael Scarnecchia backing up Jake Bentley. Obviously had very limited playing time. Scar, as Steve Spurrier used to call him. We watched him, Tyler, in the spring game. He can make all the throws. How do you, obviously not in the starting role, or, how do you feel, though, about the quarterback depth? Do you think that Jay Urich is a guy that could come in and take the second string role over Scarnecchia?
I don't think Urich will take second, but also don't feel really good about the depth. But God willing, we don't have to see that, because I don't think it would be that. Not saying Scarnecchia isn't good, but I just don't. I don't see that working out well if Bentley was down even for a game.
Yeah, the way I look at it, the only way we're going to see him is if Jake Bentley's hurt, we're up by 50 or we're down by 50. So hopefully we're up by 50 more often than not. So, but yeah, moving on to the running back position, jumping right into that. Obviously, Rico Dowdle coming back, was hurt at the beginning of last year, didn't play to the A&M game. When he got in, though, him and Jake Bentley both came on at the same time, basically. He ran for 764 yards and 133 carries, 5.7 average, 6 touchdowns. Also caught 15 balls for 55 yards and a touchdown. His top game was against Western Carolina for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler, obviously the addition, we had A.J. Turner, who started the season last year. You have Rico. You got the addition of the North Carolina transfer, Tyson Williams. How do you think that Kurt Roper and that offense and Bobby Bentley, running backs coach, is going to kind of work that backfield and kind of, get everyone their touches? How do you think they're going to manage the backfield?
I think it'll probably go 40-40-20 between the three of them, something like that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think we've talked about this before. I think Rico Dowdle is going to be starting running back day one against NC State. I do think they like, obviously, what they've seen from Tyson Williams. I know he's a guy I'm really high on. I really thought he impressed in the spring game. And then I think A.J. Turner's a guy, as we mentioned before, that they'll use a lot in the draw game, the screen game. Obviously, he's got the ability to take it the distance, as we saw against Texas A&M. But, it's definitely giving using each guy to their skill sets. I kind of think back to the days of Brandon Wilds and then Sean Carson. I mean, Sean Carson wasn't a guy that got a ton of carries, but, they knew how to use him. They knew what he was capable of, and that's what they really got to find out with this running back group. There's a ton of depth, though. Tyler, personally, I think it's one of the most underrated units in the SEC. Obviously, Tyson Williams hasn't done anything yet, but I think Rico Dowdle is one of the most underrated running backs in the SEC, and I think this is going to, honestly, with the help of that offensive line we mentioned, be one of the top 5 units in the conference by the season's end. What's your take on that?
I agree. Somebody put out a preseason poll. It was like, I don't remember who it was. It was probably a month and a half ago. It was top backfields in the SEC. I think it was top 4, and it was including the quarterback, and South Carolina wasn't on it. I was kind of surprised by that. But I think by the end of the year, I think if someone made that same list again, they'd be on it.
Yeah, I think it just goes to youth maybe, and just getting half a season's worth of
right.
Half a season's worth of tape or games or, stats, if you will. But, yeah, I mean, I definitely think, Rico, we saw what he could do. We saw the kind of moves he could put in the Tennessee game on that guy. But he's another guy, man, that's going to have to benefit from that offensive line, because you look at his games against Florida, his games against Clemson, just had nothing. And that's because, he's not the kind of guy. He's got to have a hole. I mean, I think every running back's got to have a hole. But Tyson Williams definitely showed me in the spring game, that little move he made, run in the middle and bounced it outside. He's got some pure speed to get to the outside. And he's a guy that's really shifty as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, I think, like I said, it's Rico's backfield, but would not be shocked at all if Tyson Williams doesn't get a couple starts this season. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Lots of depth, though. But moving on, run it to the wide receiver position we had talked about a little bit earlier. Obviously, the Gamecocks, the top returners are going to be Debo Samuel and Brian Edwards. Really interesting and strange year last year for Debo Samuel. Fought a lot of injuries, with his hamstring and everything. Didn't have a receiving touchdown to the bowl game. Was used a lot in, like, the sweep game. And, the running game and the kickoff return game, and didn't get a receiving touchdown of the bowl game. Tyler, kind of a silly question, I guess, if you will, but how much more do you think Debo is going to be utilized in the passing game this season? And, how much more, I guess, do you think his numbers will improve because of it?
How many – do you have his stats pulled up?
I actually don't – actually, maybe I do.
I don't
think I have his stats pulled. Yeah, I actually got it right here coming up for you. Hold on one second. He had, let's see, 2016, he only had 59 catches. So he actually had 783 yards receiving.
Yeah,
just one touchdown.
I think he'll have more catches. Yeah, more yards, but definitely more touchdowns. He's going to turn into that Pharaoh Cooper because, I mean, he's going to be a factor in every play because he blocks too. And obviously we have so much more depth this year and a lot more targets to go to. But I think his stats will see a big improvement because they're going to have to focus on Brian Edwards and Ortre Smith and Shi Smith.
Right. No, absolutely. And the crazy thing about his stats, his rushing stats last year, 15 carries for 98 yards with 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, I see the rushing stats going away because I think Shi Smith is going to take over that kind of jet sweep role, which I really like, by the way, because it was almost a sure thing inside 10 yards to jet sweep it to Debo because they knew it was coming and they still couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I think of the touchdowns against Vanderbilt, Georgia. Yeah, I mean, that play seemed to work a lot for him. So, but yeah, it's crazy. Like he had a ton of yards last year to only have 1 touchdown catch. But yeah, I think the beauty of what's going to happen, they're going to be able to slide him into the slot, which is probably a little bit more natural for him. I mean, obviously with his size and fits him. But yeah, I do see. I'm not sure. Do we know if he can throw it or not?
Probably.
Thinking out of the Wildcat, can he throw it? But no, yeah, definitely. They're going to be able to utilize him a lot. And it's always great to have a player like that that's as versatile as he is. You mentioned before Brian Edwards. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. I think he's going to grow into the next Carolina great big wide receiver like an Alshon, like a Sidney Rice. I'm not sure if he'll have those type of numbers because I think they're going to be able to spread the ball a lot this year. But I think Brian Edwards is really going to be a force to reckon with, another guy that nobody's really talking about. Question, Tyler, out of the second tier receivers such as Corey Banks, Randrigus Davis, Chavis Dawkins, up out of that group. I know they like a ton of them, but last year at times we saw a couple flashes of brilliance from especially Randrigus Davis and Dawkins. Corey Banks was a guy that just had the drops from week one, and I mean, if you get the drops in college football, you're just not going to play. It's going to be really interesting to see who's going to come out of that group. Somebody's got to step up and prove themselves. So, Tyler, what's kind of your feelings as far as like the tier 2 level receivers? Are you high on anyone particular you think is going to come out of that group? Or
I mean, I've said a few times on here that I think Randrigus Davis will make it out and then be that guy. I mean, he played injured last year and still made some insane catches. I mean, I don't think he had 15 catches all year, but some of the stuff he did catch was just like, wow, there's no way that guy shouldn't be catching more. But then we learned that he was playing all year with a bad hamstring. That's hard to recover from.
Yeah, I definitely think as well. I agree with you. I think Randrigus Davis is probably my top candidate, but some of these other guys can be real key, key guys as well. And then talking about the young guys, Ortre Smith, Shi Smith, guys, we've talked about previously. Ortre, big physical wide receiver out of Wando. We were both able to watch him in the spring game. I think he's got kind of a similar build to Brian Edwards. Looked pretty good in the spring game. I think he was still kind of coming back from that ankle injury, but to be coming back from an ankle injury, he looked pretty good. I thought the biggest thing to me that's going to be his biggest challenge, and I think this is a lot of receivers coming out of high school, is can he get off the press coverage? Can he get into his route, get off the coverage? Weapon. He needs to be a weapon for South Carolina. And then Shi Smith, the speedster, we've talked about it. I think he's going to be a lot involved in the speed sweep game. We see him kind of like an Ace Sanders, could fight for that playing time in the slot. Tyler, how's your feeling kind of on the young guys, Ortre, Shi Smith? If you had to, I'll put a little fun twist on it. If you had to predict right now, which one do you think will have the better year?
I think, that's tough. I think Shi Smith will have more yards, and I think Ortre will have more touchdowns. How about that?
Okay, I'll give you that. Do you think they're going to use Ortre more so in the red zone, or do you think that it's going to be?
I think he's definitely a red zone guy.
Yeah,
he's like one of those guys. He's so talented that even if he can't get off that coverage as well, he's still going to be open because he can jump and he's so big. So he's going to have that. I'm not going to compare him to Alshon because that's not fair. But those kinds of plays where you just throw it up and hope he can catch it.
Yeah, I think he's like 6'4". I mean, he's got a huge frame on him. I mean,
he's 6'4", he's huge.
With the spring game, and I mean, he's a big guy. Like, he's a big dude. So him and Bryan Edwards both, I love it. I love the tall wide receivers. I love the big physical wide out. So I love that we're kind of getting back to that. Yeah, I like your pick. I think right now I'd have to say I probably would say Shi Smith's going to have the better year, just because I think there's some things they're going to have to teach Ortre that, like Shi Smith, you don't teach speed, you know what I mean, and quickness. So I think he's going to have. I agree with you. Ortre may have more touchdowns, but I think Shi Smith will probably have a little bit easier transition going into year one. So, and it's just crazy looking at it. You know, this wide receiver unit, it's got a chance to be one of the best units on the team. So, which is, you know, I don't think anybody would have predicted that started last year, saying in 2017 this will be a strength. So, pretty crazy how they turned that around. But moving on, another group that I'm really high on, I think you're really high on too as well, Tyler, is the tight end position. Our guy Hayden Hurst, who just joined Twitter, by the way. Go follow Hayden Hurst. Just joined. Yeah, he's on Twitter now.
Nice.
Hayden Hurst joined Twitter. But anyways, he's coming back. Had 48 catches last year, 616 yards, 1 touchdown. Year for him, Tyler. Obviously, with the entire passing offense was down. But even while they were down in the first half of the year, I thought Hayden was a guy they went to early and often. What are your feelings as far as kind of the impact Hayden Hurst can have? Obviously, preseason All-SEC, I think second team it was selection. What do you think? How do you see Hayden Hurst fitting in this offense?
I mean, I think if you need those kind of 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 situations, I think if you need 7 yards, he's the best, one of the best in the SEC. Those kind of just sit over the middle, Gronkowski types, just fucking throw it to him, and boom, that's it. I don't know how much he will be downfield this year because I don't think there's going to be a need for it. I think he's hopefully going to be used in those 10-yard range plays.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to be a weapon. I'm honestly just getting giddy just thinking about it, having him as another weapon. I mean, you go through all that we talked about, and you get to, by the way, Hayden Hurst, who's one of the best in the conference. So, yeah, I definitely think he's going to be used big in the red zone. I think his touchdown numbers will definitely go up. Jake Bentley, I think, will go to him early and often. Like you said, having that bailout option kind of on 3rd down. Maybe the plays, there might be a lot of plays designed to him, but he's not a bad guy if you got to go to a 5-yard dump off.
He's not a bad guy. Check down in the country.
Right. Yeah, he's not a bad check down to give it to. So, and obviously he's a matchup nightmare, I think, for linebackers or bigger guys covering him. So the guy on his other side on the depth chart would be Casey Crosby, who, Tyler, I think we've talked about this, but I think a guy that nobody's talking about.
Yeah, he's a beast.
He is a beast. He sort of reminds me, I don't think he has the size of it, but he's kind of like how Jared Cook was a wide receiver playing tight end. Yeah. Like, that's how Casey Crosby kind of is.
I think he'd start at tight end for a lot of teams in the SEC.
Oh, yeah. Last year, just recapping, 23 catches, 217 yards. Actually had 4 touchdowns. The biggest one that I remember was the Tennessee game, the nice little wheel route where he was wide open and
open.
Did the
that
juju
scared the crap out of me, dude? Because I saw him running just straight 25 yards downfield.
You're like, it's too perfect
right here. I'm gonna cry.
It's like too perfect. It's just too easy. You know what I mean? Yeah, I did the little juju on the beat. That was fun. But yeah, again, I think he's one of the most underrated players on the offense. Again, he's sort of like Hayden, creating that matchup nightmare for defenses, and his speed and agility definitely make him trouble for defenses. And I think he'll be a great complement. I mean, it's the toughest thing I think about this offense is going to be getting these guys all on the field at once. Tyler, do you think they'll use Casey Crosby in any type of maybe in the slot when they go to 5 wides? Or
that's possible. I wouldn't put anything past him.
Yeah.
He's just another possession guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. A guy that can slip out there for sure. And I mean, he made some great catches last year too. I think of the one in the Georgia game he had. So, guy with good hands. He's got a lot of potential coming out. So, it'll be interesting to see how they kind of use him complementing Hayden Hurst. And then for the depth side of it, Jacob August and Keel Pollard as well. I feel like Jacob August has been at South Carolina for 10 years. Yeah, both actually really serviceable backups. I mean, August, he's got a ton of experience. Really yeah, got a lot of experience. I didn't realize Jacob August was 6'6", by the way.
Dude, he is huge. I saw him at a basketball game. It completely blew me away at how big he was.
Because I've seen him at Fan Day, and obviously he's just sitting down. I didn't know he's a big dude. So, and then Keel Pollard's kind of a younger guy. I'd be interested. I've heard really good things about him too.
Yeah,
I think
I still really like him, but he's just kind of trapped.
Yeah, had a really good spring game, didn't he?
I'm pretty sure he did.
Pretty sure he had. I think he had like one of the better spring games out of everybody. Because obviously Hayden Hurst didn't play in it, so I think he had a really good spring game. But having that depth, obviously rotating out, will be great. So I didn't miss any. I didn't miss any positions on the offense, did I, Tyler?
Nope.
Yeah, that's okay.
Covered it.
So with that being said, Tyler, just kind of your overall prediction for this unit, if you kind of had to look, what would we be talking about come January 2018? When I ask you about the South Carolina offense, you're going to say what?
Oh, man. Hopefully that they matched our expectations, because my expectations are way higher than they are for the defense. I'll say that. So I'm expecting to be a better unit than the defense. That's all I want.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the offense is going to have to carry the defense in a lot of games, and we'll obviously get to the defense next week more in depth. But I think this offense, the sky is the limit. I mean, I know that we're still pretty young, but I think these guys have grown up. They grew up a lot last year, and I'm sure they've grown up a lot in the offseason. I think the biggest thing, not only is it echoed in Jake Bentley, but with this entire unit, is how do you play on the road? How do you function? How do you operate on the road? Can you still score points when you go on the road? So that'll be really interesting. I think they're going to be led by their leader, Jake Bentley, and I think he's going to have a ton of options, a ton of guys to go to. I mean, honestly, I think this offense is going to have a banner year. I really do. I think this offense, I know I put in my preview 30 points per game, and I thought about it after, and I was like, man, that's a lot. But
that's tough.
Some of these, I just think South Carolina, don't be surprised when South Carolina's winning a lot of games 35-31. 41-34, 31-28, stuff like that, because like I said, they're going to have to score. They're just going to have to. And maybe some of these smaller games where you have like Wofford, you have Louisiana Tech, even though they're kind of good. And then who's the other non-conference game we have? God, who is the other? You got Clemson, and there's one more. It's going to bug me if I don't look it up.
I can't remember.
Man, we better. I tell you what, we better not lose that one. We better not lose that one. I'm pulling it up right now.
Oh, NC State, duh.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go. You kind of just screwed us over.
Just blanked. Yeah, I'm just blanked out. So yeah, so NC State. So you're thinking maybe the smaller games against like Wofford, maybe Vandy, just South Carolina may be able to rack it up, but I just wouldn't be surprised because I think they're just going to have to score. That being said, really no listener questions today. I was late getting the link out to you guys for the listener questions, so I do apologize about that. But one question, Tyler, I thought was really interesting that I saw on Twitter that I want to pose to you to close out the show because I think it's really interesting. You may have seen it as well. If you could take back one play in your sports fandom, like what play would you change? And so we're going to obviously relate it to Gamecock sports. If there's one play in Gamecock sports you could change at all, change the outcome,
all right,
what play would it be?
2007 against Florida, Jarvis Moss blocking the field goal. That's it, 100%.
Yeah, that was actually 06, by the way.
06.
But yeah, I know, I agree with you. Yeah, that was probably one of the most heartbreaking losses. I think I cried, man. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, I definitely cried, 100%.
I made enough to say that. I was 15 years old.
I was 11.
Yeah. Yeah, mine was – I saw a lot of people saying 2013, the Tennessee catch. I mean, I do have to agree with that.
That guy.
Yeah, just because
Jarvis
we win
Moss
that game.
On steroids, that doesn't count to me.
Yeah, that's true. The one I thought of was I kind of thought about 2007 Vanderbilt game. There isn't a certain play in that one. Yeah, if I could have a game back, I would take that one back. But the play, probably the push off against Clemson, just because of the heartache it caused South Carolina, and if you can get one more win against the Tigers, I mean, But I actually think the Tennessee catch has to be up there because that was just a crushing loss, and to miss out on the SEC title game by 1 game, I think we actually would have won it that year. So who knows? We'll never know though. But with that being said, that's going to be all for us. Again, if you want to follow us, make sure to check us out on iTunes, the Spurs Up Show. Rate and subscribe. Tell us what you like and don't like. We always appreciate the feedback. Also, be sure to check us out on armchairallamericans.com under South Carolina Gamecocks. We'll have all the latest breaking news. We'll have the show as well. And also on our Twitter account, also, of course, Armchair SCAR. Tyler, we've got a site relaunch going next Monday. Some big things happening in Armchair. And the season's 5 Saturdays away. You excited?
I'm ready, man.
Let's get it. Well, that being said, he's Tyler Clark. I'm Chris Phillips. We'll catch you guys next week. Appreciate you guys tuning in.